It's that time again, 6 p.m. on a Sunday evening. Anyway, welcome to Steve's Place. Glad to see you all here. And tonight, we're going to be delving into the world of NLP, Neurolinguistic Programming, which is kind of a form of mind control. But anyway, before that, let me remind everyone about our conference coming up August 9th to 13th at the Crown Plaza Hotel. I want to encourage everyone to maybe call us up later on tonight. And we'll give you a 45% discount if you sign up tonight after the show. I encourage everybody to come. This is probably one of the most affordable conferences out there. And for those who haven't been to one, we have the hotel will have a free breakfast for you in the morning. And in the evenings, we have kind of like a social hour, and we always have something good to eat, like a taco bar or pasta bar or something good to eat, chicken, lots of chicken. And so I encourage you all to come out, and that's not to mention, we have like about 24 speakers there. And you get to meet all these speakers and talk to them and have dinner with them and everything. So it's really a good time for all and very affordable, because, we keep it affordable. And I also like to encourage everyone to become a member of our YouTube channel. And we have 30 years of innovative ideas in energy and health online, available to you 24/7 from anywhere in the world. I mean, even our embattled brothers there in Ukraine can watch in their foxholes. You can't beat that with a stick. We have a free subscriptions. So if you go up there and subscribe, you get notified of when we upload new stuff and everything, or we rotate a free and members only stuff a lot. So you get notified of all that if you subscribe, and that's free. And we have about, a couple hundred, I think by over 200 at the last count, of videos that are free. We also, if you go to my website, teslatech.info, you'll see our conference directory, and go up there and pick out the conference you're interested in. Or if you know that the speaker you want to see, you can go there. And of course, it's a direct link for Steve's Place Live as well. So I encourage you all to go up there and see these emergent breakthroughs. Hundreds of DVDs. You can't beat this with a stick. New postings. We have quite a few every week, whenever possible. Subject to the YouTube censorship disciplinary actions, in which I've been, I guess they didn't like some of the stuff I put up there. And these conferences are important because it's only through the past that you know what to expect from tomorrow, and sometimes things that we tried in the past weren't possible, but now we have new technologies and material sciences and everything, and all of a sudden they become very possible and very viable. It's just a treasure trove of information. And then, like I say, get an exclusive membership, an extraordinary bargain, $9.99 a month for global access 24/7 to hundreds of members only videos. No longer do you have to keep shelves of VHS tapes or DVDs on your shelf. Just go to YouTube and watch it there. It's the end thing these days. So that's for $9.99 per month for an exclusive membership. You can see all the members only videos, or you could just become a subscriber and go that way. But in any case, those of you who are watching the show tonight, if you like what we're doing and what we're doing, be sure to click the thumbs up. That helps us out a lot. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I say it's free, and you may want to consider just becoming a member. So now, without further ado, let me introduce Andrea. This is Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller, and she'll be co-starring here, I guess, with Goodall.
Hello.
And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. And without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over to you guys.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that, Steve. So this is really a collaboration between Dave and I. So Dave Goodall and I both have had really great experiences in the world of the mind and delving into neurolinguistic processing, learning more about the science of the mind that goes beyond the medical science of the brain and really thinks about the quantum reality and what doesn't always appear to be reality of the conscious and subconscious. So Dave here, he grew up in his grandfather's countertop manufacturing plant, and he fell in love with the idea of business really young. He was gifted with dyslexia and ADHD, which I also have. So we have that in common. And he realized that he could see things that others struggled to see, and he could focus and take action where others would not. And his electrical engineering background, and of course, combined with the neurolinguistic program education, allow him to really look at a different aspect or the analytical let's say, analytical side of things with the mind and solving problems. And he has spent over 22 years really looking at the industry and IT. What can he do in tech? How can he make systems? How can he make things process faster and make things easier for people so that they could be less problematic and work with ease and efficiency? And he did that in the oil and gas industry with like Marathon and Chevron and other companies as well. Lots of big companies, over 100 of them. And today he really is focused on the understanding of energy and NLP-based based mental processing and the whole idea of emotional programming, which he calls MER. He'll share more about that in a little bit. And there's so much more to him that we just don't have to talk about.
Yeah.
He and I have really gotten to know each other fast over this time. Well, we've been really exploring how we can look at the mind beyond what psychologists and doctors look at, but what is the capability of what we can create when we think about energy, frequency, vibration, and the power of manifestation. So we'll be talking about that today. And then if you would introduce me, that would be lovely.
Yeah, well, it's going to be hard to follow up with because I know that here, Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller, is a dream maker, award-winning consultant and keynote speaker. That's why you are so good and gifted at explaining who I am. But you had several radio show hosts. You have a 5-time best-selling author and who manifests your dreams bigger than you ever dared to dream possible through the subconscious connection.com. Yes. So I know that the time I've gotten to know you, this is a perfect description of you, a whirlwind of energy and wisdom. That is so true. You bring your knowledge. She shared her wisdom on popular television and news shows such as 2020. Oh, we lost our presentation there. Oh, there it went. You've been on 2020, CNN, E! News, Gene Simmons Family Jewels. Too many there to really list, but I do know that you've been able to present in over 25 countries. You're also an executive director and co-founder of a 501c3, which is a nonprofit dental and mental health organization. The Keep Smiling movement. This mission is to save lives by creating a dose of hope, to be resilient no matter the challenge. And also you hold 3 PhDs, certifications, and like me, this is what I think connected us is the Masters Masters in Neurolinguistics Programming, hypnotherapy, biofeedback, and neurofeedback. And we've had a great conversation how energy impacts our emotions and how we can read it through NLP. And I'm excited for this conversation tonight. And thank you for the invite.
Yeah, this is super fun. So for those of you, some of you might have met me. I had the pleasure of being at Tesla Tech. I own multiple businesses, and I also own a publicity business where we help with events and we help get the word out, and we also take pictures of different things. So I came to Tesla Tech and met Steve Ellswick from coming and being a backup photographer for a friend of mine who had brought me along to help. And I just fell in love with the people and how they think and what I call the combination of woo and science. So it allows us to really explore things on what people know and what people are inventing at home, and these amazing everything from energy to motors to coils to products and services that help us in all aspects of our life and with the toys and the things that we play with in the world. And it's been really a great conference. I really, really enjoyed the people that I've met, and kind of fell in love with Steve and the concept of the people that he brings together for Tesla Tech. And they really, really pushed me to think even further. So it started with the Keep Smiling movement. We are a mental and dental health organization, and that started because when you smile, you affect your brain, your neurotransmitters. So when you smile, you let down dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which we call a dose. And when that smile occurs and your brain is thinking and feeling and functioning differently, by smiling and purposefully smiling, we then change the way we think, feel, and function. So I started studying more and more about that. I already happened to be trained in biofeedback and neurofeedback, so I had an understanding of how some of these things worked, the electromechanical, the neurotransmitters, and so forth. But then when I was going to Tesla Tech and I went to Aaron Murakami's events as well, I was really seeing that there was more there in this whole quantum field that I needed to explore more. So I was already starting to peek into it. And then all of you guys and gals with all your wonderful genius really started me looking into what else what did I think I thought that there was out there, information out there that I could explore and learn. And so I really want to thank all of you for really helping me open my eyes to see this deeper. So when I met Dave, and Dave and I just got, really we just geeked out on the possibility of all the quantum physics of the mind. So Dave, what would we like to talk to them about first? Maybe about what NLP is and how.
Yeah, well, we put some slides together, and maybe they fall in line and maybe they don't. One of the things I was excited about is I've been a Nikola Tesla geek for a long time. My dad was a C-130 onboard electrician during the Vietnam, so I've been around light bulbs and circuitry, and then I actually got a degree in electrical engineering. But as I learned about The Secret probably 15 years ago, and I dug more into like the Albert Einstein, the Nikola Tesla behind it, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And then in parallel, Albert Einstein's like, everything is energy. And then I loved Albert Einstein's statement is, we can't solve the problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created the problem, right? Which goes back to the conversations we got into. Our unconscious creates our problems. Problems will always exist, but we have to create a different way of thinking to solve the problems that we've already created. And there's a statement that one of my mentors told me a long time ago. He's like, have you ever noticed every time there's a problem, you're there? It's either you created or co-created. And that's why I love the whole NLP, and I love to bring up these amazing scientists that have influenced me on my journey of education. But yeah, let's see what slide pops up next. We talked about energy, right? And we want to talk about this, or we want to hit NLP first? We can go forward or backwards, or
let's go backwards for a second. I want to talk a little bit about the Tesla, when he's talking about like finding the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So let's think about what he did accomplish. So he has over 300 patents. Some of you I know are very well versed in this. So this, I do want to say what Dave and I are not trying to do is we are not trying to say that we're experts of what Tesla does and we're experts in that field. What we do know is that we have an understanding and a curiosity about it. So today, when we're talking about things, there are certain things that we have huge confidence in. Like we both are very confident that we can talk with people. We can delve into what's going in. What are the limiting beliefs? What are the blocks that prevent them and their businesses from moving forward because they don't have an understanding and a practice of using the different NLP techniques that we'll talk about more in a few minutes. They don't understand affirmation, visualization, how to manifest things, and how the language when we talk about neurolinguistic programming, it's really being very aware of our words and what are we putting out there and what are we creating, because we do create our own world. So Tesla, with his 300 patents, there's been several different stories about him really saying that when you're alone, it allows your mind to think and explore without interruption. So when we think about today, all the intake that we have. So It's amazing. Like, I love all the inventions that we have, the phones, the computer, everything that I have coming in. At times, though, when you have all this input coming in, it interrupts or disrupts my ability sometimes to continue to create. Now, on the flip side, sometimes because I have all this infiltration of ideas, it allows me to come up with new information and new ideas. So it's finding that balance of when do you take time to take other things in, and then figure out how do we learn in different fields, how do we explore different fields, whether it's energy, science, medicine, psychology, or simple things like nutrition or plant medicine, and whatever interests you, art, science, music. And we take those things and allow us to cross-reference what is it that we're taking in from these different disciplines, and how do we apply them to the other things that interest us. So if you're able to take those things, then it allows you to explore a different pathway to what you're looking at. At the same time, a lot of you that I've met at Tesla Tech, you have these amazing ideas, and sometimes you get in a stuck point, like, how do I move forward from here? Well, sometimes in order to move forward, you need to step back and really be purely present in the moment and allow your mind to listen for the answers within your subconscious. So, like, what is it that you take in? What is it that that you can pick up on that allow you to think further? Dave, let's talk a little bit about ADHD. So, like, right now, Dave, he's a multitasker just like me, but he's making noises and it's driving me wacko.
Okay.
Now, see, I just said it drives me wacko, but I mean wacko in the moment where it's a disruptor to me, because now, see, because me, I have this high, I do have high energy, and I create energy. So I am able to get things accomplished in a bigger time frame than other people. So if somebody has 24 hours and I have 24 hours, how come I can seemingly get more things done than someone else when I might even have more tasks or more responsibilities? It's because I create energy for myself, and it's something that I've learned how to do. Some people naturally have it, and some people learn how to create that. So we'll be talking more about that too. How do you generate physical, mental energy so that you can continue to move forward and overcome any other blocks that people tell you, like people say you need so much sleep, or you need so much rest, or you need so much exercise, and yet other people can not do those things and still achieve a higher goal. So we'll talk about how their minds create that as well. And talk about that. So we both have ADHD. So we want to talk about that a little bit. And we know that Tesla appears to have not only had that, but he had other things like anxiety and OCD, which often could be seen as disabilities. We see them as abilities. So tell more about that, Dave.
Yeah, actually, my wife was reading about it because my youngest daughter has dyslexia. My oldest daughter's on the autistic spectrum, and they're starting to look at these neurodiversities as gifts, right? Because we think in a different way, we see things in a different way, and it took me a long time to notice. Like when I was in high school, I used to install the car stereos. This was back in the 90s, 80, 88, 89. But at 88, 89, I could visualize, and this is why I have a fascination with Nikola Tesla also, is because it's those quiet times where you get those visualization, you create those pictures in your head, and you don't quite know how you're going to create them, but you take the visualization and you try to dissect it and have it make sense. So for me, the ADHD is I'd have these visions, even skateboarding, I'd build skateboard ramps. I'd get a vision, I would sketch it, and then everyone's like, oh, you can't do that. And it's like, oh, watch me. It's the ADHD. It was like, prove me that I can't. If I had a vision, I know something's possible. Well, if it's not exactly how I see it, we'll create something that will work out of it, right? So ADHD in my tech, I had 22 years in the tech industry. We made things happen. It's you get hyper focused, you get involved in a problem, and you get obsessed with it. I kind of had some of that OCD as well as Nikola Tesla. There's times where I've had to learn how to turn it off. And then there's times my wife will come in and the house will kind of be in disarray, and she'll be like, turn it on, use your magic, get your OCD going. And, and I can see things that other people can't, and I can get it picked up quickly and put away and organized and that kind of stuff. So I have different gifts, neurodiversity, but at the end of the day, I think we all have our neurodiverse gifts. Rather than make ourselves wrong or stupid or bad, we need to embrace them and recognize how that gift contributes to the world. Even my daughter who's autistic, there's certain things she struggles with, some speech, some social stuff, but her memorization. I just remember when we were 10 years old, we were going through this butterfly terrarium or something at school, and she was identifying these insects and she was calling them by their scientific name. And she was like 9 or 10 years old, and all the kids were giggling and laughing at her. And I pulled my phone out and Googled it real quick, and she was right. like, how do you know this stuff? But I think we all have these magical gifts in our brains, and we have ways to contribute to society. And yeah, does that answer your question? I kind of went on a tangent there.
It does. And so while Dave and I are sharing these things, when we're using ourselves as an example, because that's the one thing that people can't, challenge us on. Well, that's not true. Well, I'm talking about me. I know what's true or not true about myself. So we're using ourselves as case studies. We've decided that to be very vulnerable with who we are and how we show up in the world, because by example, then we can explain how we've had successes and what we've seen that other people might call a failure, that Dave and I kind of see that as more less as a failure and more as of, that was an opportunity for us to critique the work. So failure doesn't have to have the negative connotation that so many people have. And you guys have overheard, I'm sure, the whole, Einstein and how many light bulbs and so forth. And so many things happen like that in the world. We have to reinvent them over and over again until we get them right, or we get them to where we want them to be. I mean, to this day, I still giggle. It seems like every year, my husband and I are buying new light bulbs for different as a light bulb blows, we're looking at new light bulbs. Should we get the LED? Should we get the, so what Einstein started never stopped. I mean, the light bulbs are still going on, and we still have light bulb moments where we're figuring out different things. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the brain. When people are considered to have what they consider a deficiency, what we found is in those deficiencies, there's actually great excellence in other areas. So, for example, the dyslexia that I had, because I have dyslexia, with numbers and so forth, I found that I could see patterns that other people didn't know or didn't understand. So in school, I remember I had challenges with algebra and geometry. Now, the challenge wasn't the answer. I got the answers correct, but it was in how you show your work. I didn't know how to show my work the way the teachers wanted me to show the work. I got the work done and I got the answers, but I was applying a different method in my brain on how I derived that answer. And it was duplicatable, but I didn't have the vocabulary to explain how I just knew that was the answer. So I wish we could go back in time, and actually we probably could with hypnosis. We could go back in time and find an opportunity to hear and see what Tesla and Einstein and all these other wonderful, inventors were creating and what they were thinking and what allowed them to see things in a different pattern or a different light. Dyslexia is one of them, ADHD, other opportunities. And then with every child that I've ever met that's autistic, they seemingly have some amazing gift, which may take years for us to be able to tap into. There was one child I met who was nonverbal for 32 years of his life. And then an iPad came into it. And now all of a sudden he could communicate and talk in a way that nobody ever knew that he was even taking in that information and perceiving it. So it's part of us learning how to communicate with them. It would be no different than us trying to figure out how to communicate with a dolphin or a crustacean or an orangutan. How do we communicate? What is our language? What is the connection for us to be able to do that? The other part I wanted to mention is we are, throughout the course of this time with you, going to be specifically talking about how to visualize and manifest things and overcome limiting blocks, especially for innovators. We've done it in the world of business, athletics, people who are speakers and authors. However, we've also worked with scientists and people who are engineers and help them to overcome those limiting beliefs and release those blocks that have held them back from the next invention that will change people's lives.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll move on to the next slide. It looks like someone was really fascinated with that slide. This was one of those moments, it was a life changer for me. When I was a kid, you wanted to talk about my dyslexia or ADHD. I was that dreamer, head in the sky, and I was always dreaming, and I was told to, shut up, kid, get down onto earth, get grounded, all this other stuff. And what I noticed is through my life is every time I hit a wall, I was told constantly by people that I couldn't. You can't do that. You can't do that. Money doesn't grow on trees. And all this stuff, this programming programmed this energy in me. And when I had a mentor about 10 years ago, he was like, look, everything's just energy. And there's two primary types in how we use it. And it's this catabolic is this survival energy. And when we tend to choose that catabolic fight or flight energy, it blocks our critical thinking up to 80 to 90%. So our ability to solve problems when we're in this protective anxiety, fight, flight, survival state, we lose the ability to our unconscious. We lose that ability with creative type words. And this is just something that really stuck with me. Once I recognized my catabolic state, and then I could reflect on those times of anabolic or creation or flow state, those times where, I love the anabolic. It's that building up force. I know we've all experienced that flow state when things are just working and going well. Once I was taught the differences between fight or flight and creation, and that we can calm down and we can slowly choose. Am I still triggered? Yes. Do I still go into fight or flight at times? Yes. When a deadline hits up, this, there, that, and the other thing, it's still there. But there's this conscious awareness now, right? Where in the past it was auto drive, right? We know our unconscious, the subconscious, you have the subconscious connection. 95% of our 60 to 70,000 thoughts come from our subconscious. Just like our heart beating. We don't tell our heart to beat, it does it automatically. So a lot of these emotional triggers are automatic. But once you have that conscious awareness of, oh, I'm being an a-hole again. I'm choosing to fight. I'm choosing to put pressure. And then you can then at that crossroads make a choice. But this was a game changer for me, truly breaking down how we navigate life, either in a catabolic state or an anabolic state was a game changer for me. And learning to identify when I'm there allows me to have a greater sense of achievement. So how has this shown up for you?
So when I think about, the different ways that energy is produced, okay, so the two different mechanisms that you're talking about that allow us to experience that feeling, that knowing, the physicality of movement, of whether we need to go into overdrive to make something happen, or whether people fall back and do nothing. So that's another, when they say fight or flight, the people who jump into action, who are not always fight, the whole fight or flight, I have a different feeling about that, because we don't necessarily go in fighting. That doesn't mean fists necessarily. For me, I did well in emergency management. I do well in emergencies. An emergency happens, I'm able to all of a sudden see a big picture and see fine details and be able to handle them. So that's what we're seeing in people who, know how to, who are in fire and, rescue and police officers. These are the people who can rise to the occasion when there are multiple people and multiple things that have to be handled. And they're some people to shut down and other people to see bigger. Those of you who are watching right now, I would like you to try an exercise with me. I call it Hawkalao, based on a friend of mine, Michael Stevenson, who is a mentor who taught me NLP processing. Do you use Hawkalao as well, Dave?
Yep. Hawkalao is great to recenter and to kind of get out of, as we go more inward, that's where that freak out, and what I heard you say is some people react well in stress. If you think of like the Navy SEAL training, they train them through the stresses. So when stuff gets real, they don't go into that fight or flight. They can, what you're going to teach us right now, they know this technique to stay focused and to create solutions even under the high stressful situations.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of so I'm trained in biofeedback. So let me give an example of biofeedback. So biofeedback is the way that we respond to things. It's the way our bodies create electrical impulses for us to know whether we should be cold or hot or sweat or cry or move or function. And to measure that, it's measured in different ways, from electrodes that are being put on your skin that measure how much firing happened in a muscle. By the way, when people hear the word relax, they think that is meaning that the muscle is not working. Well, it's never not working. It's just working less. They're always on. Even when we're sleeping, all of your muscles are on. It just might not be engaged at the high level of like running a sprint or doing a hurdle or in a boxing match. Those
Right.
muscles still fire. We still have electrical energy. And with biofeedback, we have temperature, and it's also respiration. So there's multiple things that we can measure in a body. So one of the things in biofeedback, in order for me to pass my certification, is on this hand, I had a sensor, a temperature gauge on this middle finger here. It was just here on it on the base. And that hand was to just lay facing upward on the desk in front of me. My other hand was submerged past the elbow in a bucket of ice cold water with ice in it, and was submerged for 20 minutes. Now, in having that one hand submerged in ice water, normally our whole bodies then reduce in temperature because we have this experience that if one thing is cold, then all things must be cold, and our body temperature will lower. Well, in order to raise the temperature, so my test was that I had to raise my temperature of this hand, which would, of course, was my overall body temperature, even though that hand was in ice water. In order to do that, what you do is most people try to make their hand warm. In trying to make your hand warm, you actually do the opposite and lower your temperature. It's almost like you're enforcing something and trying to make something happen. You actually prohibit from occurring. However, in order to raise my temperature, I had to relax into it. So I literally let it be, let it go, reduced my breathing, lowered my tension in my muscles. Because when you're cold, what do we normally do? We like shiver and go like this. Yes, we actually seemingly to create some energy and some response, but actually to be warm is when we relax into it. It's the opposite of what we'd think it is. And it's actually the opposite of how our bodies naturally respond. We naturally shiver and get really cold. Well, the reason, so some people are like, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, you shiver and your teeth rattle because that's your body going, get inside, put on a freaking coat, put some gloves on, turn up the heat. And the reason it hurts, the reason your muscles tense and feel pain is that pain is telling your body, change your environment, go do something. It's when we can't change your environment and you only have your mind to change where you're at, is when you relax, you let things go, you fall into it. It kind of works that same way with the science of water. Water that's cold will take less time to freeze than water that's warm, because then the atoms are bouncing around. So I give that example of the biofeedback because in an emergency situation, when you go into Hakalau is when things are and like that, you got to pay attention instead of and hyper focusing. You then actually and expand out. So Hakalau is the ability to, you just put your head forward, you tip your eyes up, you find a place on the ceiling I always tell people, kind of feel like you're looking for your own eyebrows, and find a place. So this is a very attractive look, and then just stay in that for a few moments. Take your hands like this and put them out to your sides. I'm going to put my hands like this to my sides so you can see them in the frame of this camera, but you actually extend your full arm out and wiggle your fingers. As you're in Hakalau and you're looking up, all of a sudden you're able to see everything around you. You see behind your head. You can see your hands, your fingers wiggling on each side of you. And then often you can almost see beyond your hands behind you. It opens up your ability, your expansion of what you're able to see and intake in the world, and opens all of your senses so that you can see, hear, think, and become very sensitive to what else is out there, what other outside disruptions are going on in the world, so that you can respond to them in a educated, fast, quick method. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that, Dave, on what your experience with Hakalao is?
Hakalao, we used it through a lot of our public speaking techniques. While you're on stage, if you're feeling yourself, like for me, I would speak really quickly and I would get nervous unconditionally. Like it was unconsciously, right? It's like I was confident with what I was talking about. I was confident with the delivery, and then just this unconscious belief would come up, and I would just take a moment to look at the back of the room. I'd look over the door, and then I would just expand. And it's weird. You could do it in literally 2 to 3 seconds, and it's a pause where in your presentation you don't miss a beat, but it allows you to kind of recenter and refocus and get back in, right? There was times in the tech industry, I wasn't the smartest guy in the room presenting. There was a lot of engineers and geologists and people that were 10 times smarter than me, but I had to be able to manage and control the room. And so I had to have some form of confidence. And when I started to feel that inferior or whatever, I would just go back into Hakalao to just recenter and just calm it down. And it just calms down the noise. And I know we're going to get into brain frequencies here in a little bit, but I kind of picture the brain frequencies are kind of like doing like this, and then the Hakalao, and then all of a sudden they just start doing this, and you kind of get back into that flow state. And again, we break it down into energy, that anabolic state, right?
Right. And then you're bringing in more oxygen to the body, to the brain, and then you're just more aware of what's going on. So Hakalao isn't just for emergency situations. If you do Hakalao right now, chances are you hearing us and looking at our slides, you'll retain the information longer and then be able to process it and synthesize it and repeat it in a different way that's more knowledgeable. So if you are, let's say you're working on a motor or an engine or a coil, and you're reading through the books of the diagrams that say how things work and how they are managed, the whole manual of that. If you go into Hakalao before you read that manual, you'll retain the information better. Plus, if you go into Hakalao first before you look at it, and then you, instead of looking at it as a two-dimensional diagram on a paper, you start then to visualize that coil or that motor, and literally in your mind's eye, it's as if you've lifted up that motor and looked at it from a different perspective and a different view. So with your eyes opened or closed, it just depends on the person on how they can visualize things. If you can take that image and then now process it and like turn it and look at it. Now we now have engineering programs that'll actually allow us to do that, but you can do that in your mind's eye without those. So if you also have those programs and you're looking at them, now you've opened your mind to an even greater possibility. And then you can start to look for challenges. Oh, that's a perfect time to talk about how we, here, go ahead. I'll let you talk about it first. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I had a cough there. Yeah, when you were talking about mind's eye, I remembered from an NLP perspective, we're taught that there's 3 primary, but 5 total. There's a see, hear, feel, and then smell and taste. But typically in a conversation or a learning, we have a dominant see, hear, or feel. And everybody can do most people. And of course, some people are blind, some people are deaf. but we all have a capability of doing a form of all 5, but we usually have a dominant one and a secondary. So for me, I know I'm a visual kinesthetic. My auditorial, like the dyslexia in me, the reason I struggled as a dyslexic is I have to convert everything into a visual story or a movie. And when I shared that with my wife, she's like, that's insane. I've never heard of, like, my wife said academic, and it's all auditorial letters and words for her. So we all have a dominant way of how we translate. But yes, going back into a Hakalao, allows us to get into our dominant trait of how we store, remember, store to recall. We use one of these primary functions.
Let me talk a little bit more about that. So if I say the word apple, what do you hear, see, feel, think? Since we're not, you guys can make comments on this, and we'll see if we can see them. But for now, because we can only hear both Dave and I on screen, Dave, when I say apple, what shows up for you?
For me, I see like a red apple, but then my daughter loves caramel apples. So going to the store and getting her a caramel apple, I actually see movies pop through my head of different events. Apple picking when I was a kid, the caramel apples with my daughter, getting that caramel dip at the grocery store for my daughter, and chopping up apples. So mine goes to movies and thoughts of everything around apples.
So in asking Dave that question, if you're communicating with people, you can often hear how they think, feel, and function by asking them something about, oh, tell me your earliest memory of apples. I had an apple today. Tell me about, just come up with something weird to talk about. And for me, I see the word apple, and then I see an apple, and then I go into kinesthetic, and then I hear the story. I hear my grandma telling me about apples while we're making an apple pie. So for me, when I hear information, for me to retain information, for me to process information, I have to hear myself talk about it. So when you meet, I noticed this at different conferences, especially like Tesla Techs. You'll have your one group of people that like hardly talk. They're your observers. They're listening, they're visual. You can see them like they're looking at you, but they're like looking off into space. So whatever you're talking about, they're making it happen. They're inventing it. They're putting it together. They're adding it to something else. Where then there's other people like me and others who talk a lot. They have a lot to share. And some of you engineers who don't need all that language, you're like, shut up, stop talking. But for me, I need to talk to hear myself process what needs to be done. So I can write it down, I can type it, I can do a diagram, but if I verbalize it, I now can create the reality of it. So it's how I think, feel, and function. By the way, I say think, feel, and function based off of when I was a kid. So all of our everything that we, from the day that we're born, we have things that happen that we create a memory. So there, and by the way, the memory doesn't always come from when we're born. This is when we can talk about, the quantum of conscious and subconscious. Sometimes a memory can come through epigenetics. It could be generational. It could be past life. So this is where we're saying science and woo meet, because some people will say there's no such thing, or if you're devout certain religion, you'll say, I don't believe in past lives. Even if those phrases come up in, when we're asking you to remember something, if your subconscious uses that word, instead of trying to feel like it's going against your belief, just use it as a model of an example. It's just a way of, it's something that you can't comprehend and you don't know where it came from. It's from the nether regions of your mind that it's coming.
Well, just to lean on that too, there have been 2 universities and maybe more by now that have done traumatic research in mice through DNA. So like they have exposed them to electric shock with a jasmine smell to a family of mice, and then they'll breed them out 7 generations with no exposure to either the scent or the electric shock. In 7 generations, they'll spray like the jasmine and they'll freak out in the cage like they're about to be shocked. So our DNA can transfer traumatic experiences, mental programming down to your lineage. So yeah, these beliefs systems do get passed in our DNA and through our experiences.
There's another thing too. So I own another business. It's called Ignite Your Relationship. And Ignite Your Relationship is about talks about your interpersonal and your business relationships. And part of that business, I focused and specialized on disorders that people had. And what we were finding is that with some disorders, especially disorders of the vulvovaginal, which would be urinary reproductive for both men and women. If they had certain challenges within the mucosal, I can't say the word mucosal, MUCOUSAL system, they would have a reaction, an inflammatory reaction, which is referred to as a P substance. There's a bigger, fancier word for P substance. But what they were finding is that that P substance was really almost like a memory of the cell. So even though the infection may be gone, the inducer of the trauma was gone, later on, the body would still reproduce this trauma in the cell as if whatever was happening was still happening. That also was found in the brain with certain headaches, where like they would have a certain migraine headache and they would say, okay, there's whatever was causing the headache is now gone, whether it was functional or medicinal or a tumor or something that is now relieved, that is gone. They should no longer get those circular headaches or the circular migraines that would just never go away. Well, what they found is they had to disrupt the memory in that system so that it no longer still stayed that's what was going to happen. You have to change and disrupt how it's thinking, and to snap it out of it, because it was reliving a memory pattern of what happened before. So we have to sometimes retrain our minds or retrain our brains or our bodies. Just like if you have an injury somewhere in your body, you have to retrain it because that's no longer there. Same with fears or phobias. Like if you've ever fallen, chances are for weeks or maybe years, you now walk all tentative, or you're afraid of steps, or you need a cane, or you need a hand thing. And often we'll find with what Dave and I can do is we can remove those limiting beliefs that you're going to fall again, or release the emotional reaction to falling, so that we still want you to use the devices that are safe for you, but it may be that your fear of falling is what's holding you back. And if we can get rid of that fear, then you're able to realize that your core is strong enough and it was just a freak accident.
Yeah. What we most think about, we attract, right? It's that visualization. I do this with athletes all the time, and my daughters play softball. So I do this with a lot of her teammates all the time. If you step into the box before you hit and you worry about striking out, you have a 90% chance of striking out. If you walk in with the intention, I'm going to hit the ball, you have a greater chance of going in and hitting the ball. But how do you remove, and it goes back to that anabolic, catabolic energy. How do you walk in knowing that you've done everything to prepare for that moment to outwit that pitcher to hit her ball, right? And that's we just work with language patterns, and we get them to create a language pattern to speak into existence what they will focus on, right? And it's just like the guy doing the free throw shots. If he's like, if they've done 1,000 shots or 10,000 or 100,000 shots, and they've got 95% accuracy, they'll walk in during a game in the moment when the game's on the line going, I've done this 100,000 times, I can sink this. They'll have a greater chance of sinking it. So we create our world through our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and we create words into existence.
Right. So to loop back around to go with what Dave just said. So when we're born, we have things that occur in our life, and then we attach different stories to them over and over and over again, and we create an anchor. So like when I said apple, I think of my grandmother, because I would go to her house. She would sometimes babysit me. I'd sleep there on the weekends. We had apple pie. They always went to the orchard. They always had a big basket of apples at their back door all winter long. So apples, when I see or touch or feel an apple, I am super excited and think about my grandparents. I feel loved. I smell the scent of an apple. And so that has started as just a memory or a thought, and then it's been anchored over and over and over in my lifetime. And then for me, because my grandmother lived to be 95, but she just died this year, I'm 53. So I have 53 years of that anchor being drove in over and over again, that apples have this positivity of family and love, and you're cared for if you have an apple around you. And so when we think about those things in our life and what else that we might have around us, what are those other stories? Well, what if you had a bad apple, or what if you had something negative happen, or you were in a car crash and then maybe you had another ding happen to your car? Now you've been anchored that anything to do with your car is negative. Or let's say you're working on a motor and it ties up, or your tool doesn't work, or your solder doesn't hold, or you don't have a certain, compound that you need. All of a sudden your mind is like, this won't work, this can't happen, I can't make this, I can't ever get this done. And now you have anchored in the negativity of it not being able to occur, which then is more likely for it to continue to occur, because you have set up for your mind to not have the systems in place to be able to be preventative in causing more problems in the future. Do you want to address that more, Dave?
Yeah, well, the slide that's up right now is what we don't know, and Dr. Bruce Lipton, I learned from him on this, is that 0 to 7 is kind of like that imprint age, right? We're the baby in the crib, we're hungry, we scream, we cry. We don't know what these emotions are, but crying is some sort of an action or reaction, action that we can take. And then typically we get a bottle put in our mouth, right? And then so the belief there is, if I cry when I'm hungry, mom or dad will show up and feed me. And then we anchor a belief, right? Think of how many thousands of temper tantrums we've had in our lifetime, of where we've had some sort of a feeling or a thought that we couldn't put to words, all but before the age of 2. We trigger an emotion, which we take an action, and then that action usually results in some sort of an outcome. You loop it a couple times, and like you just said, we anchor in our belief system. And that's where I think what you were trying to share was, when we anchor beliefs that aren't totally true, maybe they were true genealogically, but now we've got new tools and technologies and opportunities, and money's easy to make that. Like if you go back to Think and Grow Rich in 1930, I think there was like 10 means of really making an income back when that book was written. I've got kids under 20 building Amazon stores and selling them for millions of dollars, all before the age of 30. So his belief system didn't fall in line with mine, that came from, baby boomers who were there during the Great Depression. So what I heard you saying there was, these thoughts trigger a feeling, triggers an action and an outcome, and then you loop it a couple of times, you lock in a belief system. What NLP allows you to do is to kind of, on a timeline in the unconscious level, go in and shine the light on that belief to your unconscious to show you that it's no longer true. It may have once served you, but through that MER technique or some of the NLP techniques and the language patterns, you can tear down that belief. Where going forward, that belief or that anchor will no longer negatively impact you on your daily journey.
Right. And to clear up a myth, sometimes people think that we go in and make it so that you forget. No, we don't create you to forget anything. What we do is we detach the negative emotional response to it. So if every time somebody here, I'll use, all right, so I'm a plus size girl. So there were times in my life, if somebody said something or used a word like fat or whatever, I would be hurt. My feelings would be hurt. I would think that they were talking bad about me, or I'd have some kind of negative self-image about it. But throughout my lifetime, somewhere along the line, I became very, very confident, regardless of my weight, whether I'm thin or I'm heavier. And so when people make comments or jokes or whatever about weight, I think they're funny. I laugh at them too, because I don't take them personally, because I know that even though I am heavy, I still feel attractive. I have confidence in myself. And so those words no longer affect me. And that's what we can allow that to do. So I'll remember that people maybe made fun of me or whatever when I was a kid, but I don't hold that emotion. I don't cry now. I just laugh, or go, oh, well, that's not me, because it's not me. I don't, it's not personal to me for that to happen or to be called. I also wanted to talk a little bit about brainwaves. So, how our minds think and feel, as far as how the electrical impulses work within the brain, to do an EEG, an electroencephalograph. I'm trained in that as well. So, you put the caps on your head with the little gels, and then they're stuck in there. And then we put these wires to it, and then we read what's happening and what's going on in the brain and what's lighting up and what brain waves are triggered. And so can you pull up that one where you have the talks about the different wave frequencies? So delta, that's the lowest frequency. That's like 4 hertz. It's a deep sleep. It's slowest waves. I'm trying to think what else I could tell you about it. It's the ability, it restricts the ability to focus and maintain. It's like you're dopey. You feel drowsy when you go into delta. It's like
it's your deep sleep. Your deep sleep is going to be delta, and most babies are delta state for like the first 3 to 6 months, and then you start to get that theta, and that's where you start to program your unconscious. Your operating system is programmed at that theta state.
Yeah. So low arousal, not moving. So theta is 4 to 8 hertz. It's where there's slow activity. That's where there's memories, emotions, and sensations. There's internal focus. It's meditation, prayer, different rhythm in that area. And then when we go into talking about, that's also where you feel like, a knowing. I also call it when we go into it like a hypnotic trance. If you've ever been driving and then all of a sudden you pull into your driveway and you're kind of like, you kind of don't remember getting from here to there. You remember leaving and now you're in your driveway and the rest just kind of
blurry. Yep.
Yeah. We go into automatic, we're just doing what we're doing. We're hypnotized. It's when you're watching a TV show. That's why a TV sometimes, while often, we say for people not to watch television, I will. All right. So I haven't watched TV for probably 15 years. And then over the last couple weeks, I started watching TV. I had a couple traumatic things happen in my life, and I needed to just escape for a little bit. I needed to hear people talk and get out of my own head. And so in watching TV, it really put me in a trance-like state where I'm just like I'm in the TV watching what they're doing and what they're going on. I call it mindless television. I kind of needed that break for a little bit. Now, I certainly could have done a hypnosis or another tool, but I also needed the comedy of the kind of television that I was watching to make me laugh a little bit, to put me in a different state of mind. And so you can consciously choose different things, whether it's a hypnosis, a visualization, a meditation, a TV show, or whatever it is, to put yourself in this imaginative, creative space that can be distracting. Okay, alpha is 8 to 12 hertz. It's mental resourcefulness. You can move efficiently. You just to me, that's my flow. Dave, for you, where are you at that?
I love in the mornings, I go back into meditation. So I do theta. Alpha is the learning state. I love to listen to podcasts and that kind of stuff and do movement. So that's going to be your alpha. I've been doing a lot of marketing lately. So I've been reaching a lot of high-end beta because I'm doing things that are new, uncomfortable, things I don't believe I'm good at. So I have been hitting beta a lot lately just because of some of my new branding, new marketing strategies, etc. But yeah, then I think of gamma, which is that like insight, back in the day when I was installing car stereos and I was taking cars apart and I was building speaker boxes, and that's my gamma state. That was kind of like my jam when I was building with my hands and getting creative and thinking of, envisioning as I'm building the box, what's this going to sound like? What frequency wave can I tune this to? So, I am now aware of all the frequencies, right? Because of what I do and how I help my clients. But I love gamma and I love meditation. But I also love that alpha spot because I love to listen to podcasts and audiobooks and I love to learn.
Yeah, I like the healing portion of it. Betas when we're super fast, that's above 12 hertz. It's like fast activity. It's where often people could be often referred to as more being in the ADD, where they're physically moving and you know. Uh, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. There's some controversy on the different, like, because there's low beta, high beta, mid beta, and where are you at, and how do you think and function? But sometimes it can be to the point of agitation. So you may notice that in people who are more on the autistic spectrum, who there's just so much coming in. It's hard to hear it all. So I have it's called auditory processing disorder. So that's why when Dave was moving things at the beginning, I was like, stop moving stuff. Because my brain wants to look in the TV and see what he's doing. And I can't see what he's doing. And I don't know if it's something that will help us or not help us. And so I want to know. So I'm super open, super alert. So here where I'm using by the way, we have Elon Musk at home in the country where I live in the country. We have 50 acres. And so our Elon Musk satellite doesn't always work well for live streaming. So I had to come into town to my daughter's, and her furnace runs really high. So it's really super distracting. And so there's more traffic and there's a train. So I hear all this noise. And so with auditory processing disorder, you hear everything. So you can't discriminate on which thing is more important that you're supposed to listen to. So while it can be very frustrating and nerve-wracking, it also was extremely helpful when I worked at the police department. I was a 911 dispatcher there. And when you sat at the desk, I managed 4 911 lines. We had 5 regular lines. I talked with the sheriff's department and the ambulance and for helicopter and for the highway patrol. At the same time, we were on the computer typing in reports. At the same time, we were managing where all the police officers were on the street and having communication with them. At the same time, we're entering warrants and looking up license plates to see if there was any hits. At the same time, we're managing a window where people would come to ask questions or pay bail bonds or so forth. Meanwhile, we're also writing reports. So and we also had to watch the people. We had a small jail there. We're doing all of that at the same time. So talk about having to be able to multitask. I swear sometimes, 2 hands were doing one thing while my nose was hitting something to make it work, or my foot's over there bumping something else to get it going. You literally had to be an octopus to work there. And that being in that hyper mode to be able to take in all this information, because we had to be able to hear everything from where it was happening within that room to be able to complete the job. And so that was a gift to me, that I could take all that information in and be able to fluctuate where I paid attention and where I didn't. I actually did better with that being there, because I knew how to manage the sound coming in. Where now, because I'm not in a situation like that all the time, I've gotten out of the practice of using how to utilize that gift in my environment. However, when I go back to a really noisy environment, so like I travel a lot and speak at events, and so I may be coordinating event while I'm also speaking at that event, while I'm also taking pictures and sometimes helping MC all at the same time. And so I'm on like super hyperdrive right there. And I have to be able to be functioning and thinking where I'm taking everything in. Because even though it's not a negative, it's a positive. It's a positive excitement. It's still emergency mode that I have to be in.
Yeah. And, again, I like how you said there's discrepancies around some of the beliefs. I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about from the beta state, like the entry into beta is good. It's where you're taking your alpha state learning and you're processing it. But as you kind of hit that beta level 2 and level 3, that's where we're starting to edge some of that incoherence, maybe some of that anxiety, some of that overwhelm. We're starting to lean into some of that catabolic. It sounds like you have learned how to leverage well under the stress, that it's kind of like your superpower. You've learned how to navigate in the chaos and leveraging some of your other neurodiverse gifts and how you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's negatives to that. So for me, it's been a new learning for me because I've been doing a lot of extra releases on my, when you were trained in NLP, we have this gift to be able to use these different exercises on ourselves to remove past memories, to, deal with grief or loss or different things happening in our world. And it allows us to show up differently. And sometimes when we have access to all these, gifts and so forth, it's really nice to have peers like Dave, where we can then talk about them and process them with other people, because not everybody gets us. So just like all of you at Tesla Tech, it's nice to come to Tesla Tech because it's like, people who get it, we're all together. These people who have this higher functioning of their brain, or this ability to visualize something that's never been created, or have different ideas on different controversies, where we can really talk and be open and be welcome to be these people who sometimes in other environments were considered weird or different or nerdy, and people don't want to hear us talk about a, Bandini wheel or, or a Tesla coil. They're not really interested in that. And so they have no interest in what we're talking about. So it's really fun to be in environments where you can be with people. And then at the same time, like for me, I've spent the last 2 weeks at home where I've not been on the road. It's actually been 3.5 weeks now. And that sounds funny. I haven't been to an event for 3.5 weeks. So for me, I feel like it's quiet, and quiet is weird for me. And so for me, I'm trying to come into being okay with things being quiet, because I am so used to being in this state all the time. For example, 3 weeks ago, I covered 7 different events in Dallas in less than 48 hours. So I went from event to event to an event. And then we had extreme temperatures, because even though we were in Dallas, it was weird weather. We had 2 outdoor events at 33 degrees. So I had to operate differently and convince my body to be warm in an environment where I didn't have a coat or anything with me. I'm wearing a dress and with no coat, photographing for 6 hours in 33-degree weather at 2 different events. So, you have to function differently. And so then to come home from all this busy to quiet, quite different atmosphere. And so you have to learn how to adjust and be different in the space. One of the reasons I brought that up is being with a lot of innovators. Actually, it seems to be the opposite, where they're used to being alone. And then they come to an event and the input is too much. So I would talk to different people and they're like, gosh, I love talking to you, but I've talked to too many people today. I need to go to my room and be alone, because they're used to being alone.
Downtime. Yeah.
So it's too much people. And of course, you got to think about who, if you're an introvert or an extrovert, how do you regulate how you feel in the world with all this other people and all this other activity. Introverts tend to prefer that alone time. They tend to be smarter and tend to be our innovators. So, if anybody's ever made fun of anybody who's an introvert, please don't, because those are our wonderful, smart people like Einstein and Tesla, and maybe you who's watching right now will be our next one that we'll be talking about for years to come.
Well, I was going to backtrack and just go over what NLP is.
Sure.
And then show how to problem solve, like the problem, and how we're taught how to do it. And then we can kind of show that timeline and then wrap up, and then see if there's any questions in there. And I know we skipped the beginning. What is NLP? NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro is our brain. It's the physical component as well as the mental and emotional components of our neurology, right? Think of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then the linguistic is the language part. How does language trigger our thoughts, feelings, and emotions? And Dr. Andrea did some great, the apple. What is apple? What comes up? So it's our neuroprogramming. It's the anchoring, and how does the language, cause you to think, act, and react? And then that's the programming, right? When you see, hear, feel, what does your programming dictate? What is that anchoring? What does that go to? So NLP is just a pseudoscience perspective from tons of research over the last 30, 40, 50 years of what's traditional thinking. It's pretty accurate 99% of the time. Of course, people have traumatic events and their thought process can be a little askew. But what they've done is, through a lot of the psychological research over the last 40 years, the NLP processes has a higher success rate of breaking down limiting beliefs, reprogramming thought processes, and eliminating all that gunk out of our unconscious mind. Anything you want to add to that?
No, we can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Okay. And then this next slide I loved because we have a lot of scientists in the world in the room. And what slide is that? And this is just basic troubleshooting the problem. What I noticed, even as me when I was in my engineering world, we'd have symptoms of a problem and we'd think that's the problem. So this is how we're kind of taught to think, is this chart right now. It's like, oh, here's this catastrophic problem. But actually the way we should be looking at this is like this. We have all these symptoms up top, which presents a problem, and then there's a greater problem underneath. So we often sit up here in these example areas as thinking as that's the problem. But that's where I love what you shared earlier, the Hakala, getting into the alpha state and saying, okay, so if this is the symptom, it's a symptom of what problem? Oh, this is the problem that shows up. Okay, and then what's the root cause of that problem? So Hakala, and that's why I love what you were sharing earlier. If we as scientists want to get to the problem, we often get stuck at the root symptom. But as we dig deeper, and that's why going to events, going for a walk, going into meditation, whatever you need to do is to get out and detach from that emotion of that specific event, can often get you down to that root problem. But what are you seeing through all this?
Well, now that you showed it upside down like this, I'm thinking of this is the controversy, I think, between medicine and what we do is, sometimes instead of getting to the core of the problem, we're given medications or
we're up top and we're just,
yeah. Like, well, so I'll give you an example. Right now, the way I'm sitting on this couch, I don't know if you guys know, I'm like, I am so uncomfortable. Because I had to hurry to get here because for whatever reason, tonight was the night that the internet wasn't going to work well. So I had to hurry up and get here and find a new place to be and find, the lighting and get everything where I needed to be, which is not my usual situation. And so I'm sitting on something that's extremely uncomfortable. So a lot of times then what people would say is, oh, okay, we're going to treat the problem of like being uncomfortable by, getting me a footrest and putting my table on something different, or when the problem is that I need to be sitting up higher instead of sitting low where my knees are bent. I'm sitting on a couch that's lower than where I sit. And so my knees are like way up here like this. It's like I'm scrouching. So squouching, that's a new word. Crouching, squatting and crouching together is called scrouching.
There you go.
And so let's get to the root of the problem. However, the root of the problem could be even more than that. If we think about what's really going on, it may be not even that the couch is uncomfortable, but it's because in my desire to share and give information, by the way, as I'm talking, I'm processing and I'm realizing this. In my eagerness to share information, I like to lean in and I like to lean forward, and it's inhibiting my motion and my movement of when I get in the zone. Like, so when I'm with clients and I get in the zone and we're sitting, I literally look like all of a sudden I'm coaching a football game or something. I make these huge, physical, well, you can see my hands moving around a lot, and I can't get in that physical space or that movement that I would do, whether I'm on stage or if I'm sitting and talking. I can't get into my coaching style. So actually, it's probably not even the chair or the couch that's the problem. It's what's in my head that's prohibiting me from having the movement to be able to describe to you what I want to be able to describe. And because I can't control the space to make the screen bigger. So when I was trying to show you Hakalau and I'm doing Hakalau like this, like this, instead of having my arms completely extended. So we're not getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah. Well, this is what's helped me too. And back in my engineering days too, is this was a game changer for me when I was trying to solve problems, because we'd often get stuck in what's wrong, what's caused the problem, how have you failed to resolve it. But when I took 1 to 5, what's wrong? Say, for example, my marketing sucks. Well, what would you like to change? Well, the change is I'd like to have new clients that are looking for me right now. So if we're focused on the problem, we're not focused on the solution. The solution thinking is more likely going to bring you the solution than sitting in the problem. And that's the other thing is it's that whole catabolic energy again. When we bring catabolic energy, problem. Well, if you were to flip the problem to a solution, what would be happening? What is the solution? I don't necessarily know the solution, but when this problem's gone, what will be happening? That when we're solving problems, this for me was a game changer when I was going through the NLP, because I had been in an engineering world of so focused on problems. It's like, no, we use technology to build solutions so problems go away. So I don't know. I just put this up there because this was a game
I'm
changer
actually
for me.
glad you did, because something came up when I was at not this year's Tesla Tech. I didn't make it to this one, but the year before I had the opportunity to speak on stage, and I talked about biochar, which is energy. And then I talked a little bit about the smile movement and the neuroplasticity a little bit. But one of the things that kept coming up is I kept meeting these wonderful people with inventions and innovators and these cool ideas, but they were terrified to share their information with anyone because they were afraid of being shut down, afraid of more serious things, of like possible death or people coming after them or chasing them. And I found it very frustrating for me, because I felt like even though those things could happen, I felt like there was a limiting belief. The limiting belief is fear. Fear is a limiting belief. And if we could get people out of that fear, when you stand in the solution of what could change, well, if we had information that lots of people knew, then lots of people know it. So they're not going to kill 100,000 people with that information. If there's only one, they could get to one people, but they're not going to get to 100,000. And if 100,000 people are sharing this information, and then we can show that it works and what's happening, now you have a movement, whether it's grassroots, and then you can make things happen. And then there's, things are written, and there's copyright, and there's things that's happening. And so I always wanted to encourage everyone that I was talking to that were afraid of these different things. I'm like, how can we release the limiting belief of fear that something negative would happen from them doing something positive with energy and motors and devices that could change the world to give people electricity and heat and healthcare. So that is what. So if you find yourself being a person who's like afraid to share your work with other people, or reach out to us. We'd love to help you overcome that and figure out what are the ways that you can share your information. How can you get it copyrighted? How can you get it trademarked? And how can you get other people knowing, so then you're not going to be held back and nothing negative. The negative is less likely to happen.
Yeah. So I know we've been talking a lot about, through NLP and through some of the hypnosis and through the theta state, how do we rewire our belief system and get those limiting beliefs out? The three-step process I've kind of derived is the conscious awareness. You need to be out of the unconscious, that 95% operating system, that kernel that dictates what we do every day, that 60 to 70,000 thoughts, 95% on autopilot every day, right? If you first need to be aware of what you're doing. So through conversation and NLP conversation, at least you can say, hey, this is the outcome I'm getting. And then we can have a conversation where you can dictate and expose how you're getting to the current outcome. So now you're aware of it. Once you're aware of it, then what we just shared on the last slide, when the problem's gone, what will be showing up in your life? So that's creating a new outcome. What will you see, hear, and feel? You can leverage hypnosis. You can do mantras. You can do meditation. There's all sorts of things that can be implemented to rewire your thoughts. MER we'll talk about in just a second, and then repeating it. Once the limiting belief is gone, once the new one's imprinted, it's almost like driving on a fresh highway of snow, right? The first time you ride on it, it's a little bit difficult. You got to go a little slow. It's a little bit wobbly. As more and more cars drive that pathway, it gets easier. You can pick up speed. It gets easier to drive on. It's the same way with our neuroplasticity in our brain. Once we get the limiting belief out, we pave the new highway. We drive on that highway more and more, and it gets easier and easier to drive on that highway, and then the old path actually goes away.
That's a really great analogy, because living in Ohio, where there's a lot of snow, I've been in other cities where the people there go into panic over an inch of snow. And I'm like, I've literally had to say, here, let me drive, because an inch of snow is nothing.
But people with a new thought, a new possibility, whether it's success or failure, there's so much the same thing. It's like driving on a fresh road of snow. They're so scared to, this change could be great, but it sucks where it is and it could get worse. So I'm just going to sit right here and tremble. It's like,
Good point. Good point. I've also seen this with some innovators when I was talking with them and they're talking about bringing their devices to the world. I would hear things like, well, what if a whole bunch of people want it and I can't fulfill their orders? Well, right now you have 0 orders because you're not telling
It's
anyone.
funny you say that. 2 weeks ago, my daughter she had to have a friend cover and they're doing a cooking class. And they had to cook this. They had to do all the research. They each had to do their own shopping list. And as she's going through, she's on the autistic spectrum. So she's that overthinker analyzing. And she got stuck in a freeze fright of, Dad, how am I going to get the video to the teacher? We haven't even shopped for the ingredients yet. And you're worrying about how we're going to get the video to the teacher? But that's her way of thinking. She had to have from beginning to end, had to be locked in her head before she could get started. Ooh. But once I said, take that off the table, just get started. We'll find the ways as we go. And I sat there and I recorded them and I put it together. We blended it. I gave it to them. They did all of their overtakes and sent it to the teacher and they got an A. But it was just neat to see her get stuck in one step of many, and we hadn't even started yet.
Well, thank you for saying that. So with innovation, really innovation marketing, writing, penning an article, writing out a checklist, mapping out a diagram. If you don't get started, you'll never get to the end. You have to get started. However, part of what we do with NLP is we look at people's timeline. So I'm making my timeline this big. So your timeline is from beyond birth to beyond death. So if we made our timeline I've only got my hands about 8 inches apart right now. If this was my past and this was my future, I've got 53 years in this 8 inches of a timeline. Oh, thank you for the timeline there on the screen. All those significant events fall on that timeline within this space. And sometimes people are living in the future and they're not present now. I had a friend who was like that with a woman that he loved. He was so worried about her breaking up with him and him never seeing her again, which was interesting because they were only in the dating like stage. So they weren't even a couple yet. So I'm like, you are already focused on years from now, you being together and breaking up. And you're not even together yet.
Right?
You have to get together.
Yeah.
And you're going to lose her because you're so in the future. She's not there. So she's going to leave you because, you're already married and divorced. And she's like, wait, I didn't even get a chance to like you.
I haven't even kissed you yet.
Yeah. And here you are divorcing me. Yeah.
So I'll go back just real quick because a lot of us, we store everything in a timeline. At the unconscious level, it's stored in a timeline. So this picture just kind of shows us in space in the moment where a lot of us will see the future either to our right or to in front of us, right? We could have some traumatic events or just misprogramming of time. But the most common people is my future is either directly in front of me or to my right. And my past is either directly to my left or directly behind me. I've had some people that are kind of cockeyed. They might have a directional off to the right and behind. It depends on the situational. But that's just an image to when we're talking about time. It's like if you were to picture last weekend, where would it be? And a lot of times people would either point to the left or behind them when you ask about an event.
Right. And so we can help you with your timeline. So if you're a person who's always late or always too early or somebody who can't get ready, we can help you with those different things because maybe you're living in the future or maybe you're living in the past and you can't ever get to anywhere because you're still focused on things that are behind. Or maybe you're just not even present to what's happening in your world. I had a client that when I did that, asked where their past and their future was. Their past was also in front of them. So their past to their future. So if I was sitting this way, I said, where's your past? And they said, right here. And I said, where's your future? And they said, right here. And I said, oh, do you realize that in order to get to the future, you have to relive your past?
That's crazy.
And so we had to shift their timeline with their mental beliefs so that we could put the past behind them so they didn't have to replay their whole past to get into their future. It was quite interesting what we can sometimes discover about people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what this is
one too. There's when you're in time and through time. So people that are in time are like often in the now. And so maybe they're not as organized or have things planned out. And then the through people who've got like everything mapped out. You're probably a through person, Dave, because Dave is super organized. Amazingly, his systemization, he's got that locked down tight. And it's in front of me and I want to be there.
Yeah. It's funny. There was someone then in the comments earlier that says my gift is laziness. And mine is too. It's because I don't know if it's the dyslexia and the OCD, but I spent hours and hours to automate my whole business so I don't ever have to do it again. I'm like, I hate doing this. I hate email. I hate automation. I hate data entry. So I created all of these scripts and it took me 2 or 3 weeks and I don't have to do it anymore.
And I love that. To me, that is such a gift because I don't want to redo it, but I'm constantly recreating the wheel. Now I am making some really nice wheels.
Yes.
They're very beautiful wheels and they get the job done and they do move forward. But if I got one really good wheel, could I just use that one wheel and then I could focus on what I really need? And then if I needed a new wheel, then we modify the wheel that we have to be better instead of recreating it from scratch. Yeah.
So, and what's on the board right now is Dr. Matt James proved this and got it accredited with the integration of psychology. This is the foundation of mental emotional release. And mental emotional release, what it does is it looks with the understanding that we store our belief systems in a timeline, in a visual timeline, that there apparently was a gestalt, a first event from a traumatic event, where you have anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, which are the 5 primary emotions that lock in our beliefs, our traumatic events, or our catabolic triggers, right? And through this, like what you're saying, right now we're in the now, you'd go back to your past, either into the womb, past life, somewhere on your timeline when you've had a catastrophic event. I've had kids with junior high is horrible. I can't tell you how many clients we've gone back to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to where Billy, Tommy, or Susie, Jenny, someone did some bull crap in junior high, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and they're today in their 30s and 40s, and that time on the basketball court, and I got pantsed or some stupid crap, right? And then now they're scared to do anything with their business or take action or what have you. We get down to that first event, and we allow the opportunity to be above it, in it, let it go, and then come out with a new possibility. You get to see it for what it really was, In that moment, yeah, it was catastrophic, right? You were in junior high. But then there are times where it came through DNA. It's like as you were around your mom and your dad. My business partner, Simon, just came in and we had a conversation yesterday. I was like, hey, do you ever have moments where you're like, you did a cough or a sneeze or you said something, you're like, damn it, that's my dad. He's like, yeah, all the time. He goes, as I'm getting older, he goes, I look in the mirror, I see my dad. The tone of my voice, it's my dad. It's like, so it's like this genealogical thing. It's a real thing. Like our parents program us by what we see, hear, and feel, and it comes in the DNA. Mm-hmm. So this also allows you to get down that genealogically down to a parent's timeline and allows those emotions to be released easily so that you can actually take action towards what you want to. Just like my daughter, how am I going to get the video there? Like, let's reprogram. So we've got a session scheduled for Christmas with my daughter. I can't wait.
Oh, I love it. Can we give him an example of taking? Do you want to do a little simple, a simple timeline thing with me or something, and we can do that as an example?
Sure. Let me pull up a quick.
Really simple and easy.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? You said something at the beginning. I talk really fast all the time because I always, as a kid, I was told to shut up. I didn't have anything important to say. So even when I am like the guest and I'm told I have an hour or as long as I want, because he told us we could have an hour or go as long as we want. So we're just going longer. But I'm talking super, super fast. Unnecessarily because I have the time and space to do it. So okay. I would love to release that. I don't have to talk really fast and be afraid that Steve's going to come in here and shut me up.
Okay. So what's the limiting belief?
So my limiting belief is that if I don't hurry up and get out everything I have to say, I'm going to be cut off and I'm not going to be allowed to talk.
And how's that a problem?
It's a problem because when I do have time to share things, people often don't understand me because I'm talking too fast. And in my haste to hurry, then I'm not reading the room or reading the people that I'm with. And so that it can create a communication problem, especially in sales.
So if we flip the symptom upside down, what is the greater problem?
The greater problem is that I have this fear that I'm going to be in trouble. And so, yeah.
The fear was the greater problem is I'll be in trouble if I don't get all my words out.
No, that well, it's not, maybe not in trouble, that I'm going to be, probably that somebody's going to think I'm not important, or they think what I have to say is not important enough. Like, I'm going to be, help me with the words on this so we can get there faster. I'm going to be, and those of you who are watching, write things in, help Dave. So what do you hear me trying to say? I'm sure you've had situations like this, where I feel like I'll be cut off and I'll be unheard.
Okay. So it's the fear of being unheard.
Yeah.
Because of why?
Because in my past, I have attracted people in my life who, when I want to share or tell information, they cut me off and they don't want to hear what I have to say because they want to hear what they have to share.
So my words have no value?
Right.
Did we lose you?
No, I just said that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I don't speak quickly, I have to speak quickly, otherwise I'll be perceived as having no value.
Or they'll just start talking, or whatever time they've given me, it'll be cut short. So I have been around people in my life where they say they'll give me so much time, professionally as well, and then cut me off and cut the time. And so then I'm unheard. Awesome. I don't ever get to finish talking about.
Do you know when this was created?
It started when I was probably like 4 or 5.
4 or 5? Okay, cool. Go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And ask it right now, is it right with your unconscious mind for you to release this limiting belief today and be aware of it consciously?
Yes.
What was the root cause of the problem? The first event, which when disconnected will cause the problem to completely disappear. If you were to know, was it before, during, or after birth?
After.
After at what age?
Age 3 or 4. 3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5. Pick one. Which one comes up? 3, 4, or 5?
4.
4. Okay. I'd like to ask your unconscious mind to float up in the air above your timeline into the past, and I want you to fly down into that event when you were 4 years old, and we'll call that position C. Let me know when you're there.
I'm there.
Okay. Notice what emotions are present, and also note if you're aware of the decision that was made there too.
Okay. Yeah. So I felt like what I had to say wasn't important, valued, that I wasn't. What I had to say wasn't important.
You can feel the emotions. Can you feel the emotions?
Yeah.
Okay. Float back up above the event.
Okay.
So you're going to be hovering the event.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to spin and look towards the now, making sure you're well before the event ever happened.
Okay.
As you're looking through the event, preserve the learnings and ask yourself now, where are the emotions?
They're not there.
Okay. And the decision?
It's not there because that situation hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Now go ahead and float back down inside the event and look through your own eyes. Check on the emotions. Are they there or have they disappeared?
They've disappeared.
Okay, good. Now the decision, has it disappeared too?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and come back out of the event and you'll hover over the event. And I want you to come back to now only as quickly as you can allow all the events between then and now reevaluate themselves. You'll continue to let go of all the negative emotions that have built on top of that event. Continue to assume position B, where you'll preserve the learnings, letting go of all the emotions on each event and allow it to reevaluate itself all the way back to now.
Okay.
Are you back?
Yep, back.
What's your favorite pizza?
Double thick crust with pepperoni and mushrooms.
There you go. And the reason I asked that is to get you out of a trance state if it still resembles. And so as you ask yourself now, tell me about that limiting belief.
So now I realize that if someone were to stop me, now I have the confidence to say I wasn't finished. Are we on a time? Or even before I even start, say how much time do I have?
Yes.
And then if someone says I only have a couple minutes, as I start to tell them things, get out what I need to say, and then say, do you have time for me to expand on that?
Yep. And again, every limiting belief is built on what we call truths. The S at the end of the truth is our SHIT. There's some truth there. I mean, you did probably at that moment in time in that limiting belief, you did get cut off, or you felt unvalidated or unworthy. But there was, through those eyes, that emotional state, you added your spin to it.
Right. So in that moment, so a couple of the times along that timeline with some of the people who have cut me off, those people probably thought I didn't have anything important to say, but that didn't mean that I didn't have anything important to say.
Correct.
It was just their opinion in that time, or they were in a hurry. And so not to take it personal, because they forgot to tell me that they had something else, or something else happened that I couldn't see it. Like if we're on a phone and someone does that, I can't see what's happening. Maybe somebody's wife is going, get the phone. Like we don't know.
Right. Well, awesome. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that share and being vulnerable. And that was a good job.
Yeah. So I wanted him to do that so that you guys could see that happen in real time, what it was. And so when you see me like turning, so I'm looking back into the past of the timeline. And then when I shifted this way, I'm not in now. Usually now you're back right here. I was like, I had gone into the past and was looking forward from the past into the future before that event happened. And then I was able to come along the timeline to today. And so what's really interesting is like that, we can let go of a story or emotion that we created, and it can go that quick. So when we go through and do these things, literally what people may have done in years and years of other modalities to release something that never went away could be released like that in a moment.
Yep.
By the way, it's not always releasing negative things. Sometimes it's anchoring and finding positive in the past and bringing it through to now as well.
In my anxiety technique that I do too, is people will say I'm in an anxious state, and I'll have them say, okay, what specifically are you anxious about? And anxiety, if we break down anxiety and depression, and this is very simplistic perspective of what they are. Anxiety is taking a past failure and throwing it into the future. And depression, again, these are very simplistic. I know they're very serious issues, and I don't want to degrade what they are. But depression is going back into an event and sitting in it and not seeing any ability to move. Mm-hmm. So that's just the simplistic way of anxiety and depression. But the quickest way to resolve anxiety is when you're in a state, what is the problem? And if you were to fly above your timeline out to when the problem is gone and look towards the now, it will show you the next step. Mm-hmm. Because the anxieties were kind of like that frozen, like my daughter. It's like, oh my God, I can't even get started because how am I going to get the video? It's like, okay, let's fly out. The video's at your school teacher. What's the next thing you have to do? She's like, well, we have to go to the store, Dad. I have to get the ingredients and my friend has to come over. And I'm like, yeah, well, let's start there. Let's do that. We'll worry about that problem when we get there, right? But some people really do. They'll get in such an anxious state that they'll get stuck and can't even start because they're worried about step 15. I'm like, let's get step 1 through 5 done first. We'll worry about that when we get there.
Right. So for you innovators who want to design things or make them, go ahead, play with them, design them, visualize them, create them in your mind, create a mock-up of it, make it happen, and then worry about well, I don't even want you to worry then either. There was a monk that said, is there something you can do about it? No, then why worry?
Right.
If you can, yes, then do something about it, so why worry? It's an opportunity for you to get things done. And then that thought of whatever that's holding you back will come later. And then you address it at that time so that you're moving and constantly forward to do things. So it's really a beautiful way to allow you to open up your mind to find different things. And I want to remind you too, that when you have an opportunity to remove limiting beliefs and then have the moment to visualize, to create and manifest things. So for visualization, when he's asking me, do you see things? Is that emotion there? Let's think about that with visualization for creating some kind of new electrical component, or maybe some new device that goes with other devices that we have, or a new application to help us respond or function or work in the world. When we see it being developed and we see ourselves using it and we see other people using it and it being shown to the world, then that visualization helps you manifest it into reality.
Cool. Do you think we missed anything today?
I think we have covered the whole world.
Perfect. And there's Steve.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So for allowing
Awesome.
this.
I hope that was beneficial to everybody.
Well, you need to tell people how to get hold of you.
Oh, yeah. Do we have that up there? There you go. We want to have an opportunity to continue the conversation. We thought about inviting people to do a webinar with us where we can actually do some of these techniques, talk about it, and further really do some deep diving. So if you go to thesubconsciousconnection.com/Tesla Tech, we'll follow that up with you and give you some more information. Right now, we just have a basic page up that tells you to email us, but we'll have a little bit something later for those of you who are looking at it in later months. You might see something more decorative and more exciting, but we want to be able to continue the conversation. So maybe we can bring, exercises like this to Tesla Tech and actually, maybe do a workshop or something where other people can participate and see how we can take some of the other modalities of the things that you use and the inventions that you have and integrate NLP with them so that you can reach a bigger audience for yourselves.
Perfect. And I'm on the social media channels. I do have a Facebook, a Tap Mental. I've got a TikTok. I've got a YouTube. I've got an Instagram. I put out a bunch of those 60-second to minute and a half videos that are entertaining and also drop some nuggets of how to do some of these quick things. So this has been amazing.
And we have a question here from Maria.
Yes.
Does a catabolic state correlate to the sympathetic nervous system? Does the anabolic state correlate to the parasympathetic nervous system?
I will let Andrea say that because she said she was so thankful that I used anabolic and catabolic and not
the reason we actually didn't reference those is because we were trying to get away from the medical jargon. But yeah, that's really that's it. Because when you're in fight or flight, and then you're in where you're using those different parts of your life for the parasympathetic and sympathetic. So yeah, you've got that right on target there. With
nailed it. Yep.
Yeah. Good job.
The anabolic and catabolic for me being an engineer just resonated so quickly, and it just simplified my ability to be conscious aware of when I was stuck in my own crap, like my own fight or flight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions that come up?
I'm not seeing it right now, but we'll close this. But I just want to remind everyone, if you liked what you saw tonight, be sure you go and smash that thumbs up, so that we know it. So anyway, y'all have a great day, and we'll see you next week when Russell Anderson will be here on Man of Gravity stuff.
Yeah, super great. Thank you, Steve. And Steve's an amazing, wonderful man. If you haven't been to Tesla Tech, please come. It is really, really a great way to learn so many different things. I call it's a combination of science and woo all together in one. And I tell you, every time I've gone, I just fall in love with these people and with how extraordinary they really are.
And we'll see you later. And that should be pretty much of a wrap.
All right. See you.